once you can really ground in to the core of your being that you are as worthy as any other being ever has been, could be, or will be, by virtue of the fact that you are it. There has never been one that is more worthy, more divine, and there's no moment more divine than this moment. You're perfectly imperfect. Everything is leading you to the next greatest and grandest version of yourself, and everything is conspiring in my favor all the time, in always and always. And so you boil down, okay, why is this happening for me? Oh, it's easy when we love what's happening, like to be excited, but now what this helps you to do is, instead of being a puppet on a string, right? If this happens, I'm happy. If this happens, I'm sad. If this happens, instead you start working on showing up in the state that you choose to be. You're becoming proactive instead of reactive. And these are really big turning points.
Welcome to Letting Go and the Greatest Secret, where we explore the end of your suffering and the beginning of lasting happiness. I'm Hale Dwoskin, and today I'll be joined by Brandon Beachum. Brandon Beachum is a thought leader, author, and serial entrepreneur. He hosts the Positive Head podcast, which has amassed over 20 million downloads, and the late-night online talk show, Optimistic. Brandon's primary focus is on helping people understand the ultimate nature of reality and create more of what they want to see in their world. He has distilled his wisdom into practical and grounded advice in his book titled The Golden Key: Modern Alchemy to Unlock Infinite Abundance. So welcome, Brandon. It's nice to be here with you.
Hello, Hale. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure.
I almost said Hale, yes, but I thought a bad dad joke just to start it off might be a bit much.
I would have laughed.
Okay, actually, I should have just went for it, right?
Right.
That shows you, like, don't second guess yourself. That's just
right.
That first instinct.
Yeah, you'll find out I'm very flexible.
I see that. All right, noted. Prepare everyone for more dad jokes.
Good. So Brandon, tell me just a little bit about you and your work.
Well, let's see where to begin. I've been a serial entrepreneur work-wise since I was a little kid. I started selling candy at school, like 11 years old, and became like my daily routine to go up to 7-Eleven and buy 5-cent candies and sell them for a quarter. I was the richest kid in 6th grade, and then everyone started copying me, and we had to cut that out. They made a rule you couldn't sell candy at school anymore. So just always enterprising and kind of that sort of thing. So I have raised conservative in a very conservative Christian household. Or at about 11 years old, that same time, I referenced my father became religious, and he really, we have the same birthday. I have a lot of synchronicity around my birthday. It's quite the story. It's my grandmother's birthday and great grandmother, and on and on. If you wanted to hear the whole thing, I could tell it at some point, but it's pretty wild. But I can really see myself in him in the way that once he found his spirituality, he really, he went to it. Up until COVID, he's 76, as we were talking about a few moments before recording. And up until COVID, he was still door knocking, inviting people to his church on Sundays, And so, for me, I was raised, conservative Christian household. I went to a Christian college. I eventually got kicked out because I was a little bit too much of a wild child, AKA normal.
Right.
and from there, early 20s, I found I met someone who claimed to have some intuitive or psychic ability, and she just kind of like floored me with some of the things that she demonstrated, and that really kind of opened me up beyond what I had been exposed to in a sort of Christian house, Christian church. Christian college. So yeah, I started reading books at that point, and that's when I just started having sort of my first synchronistic or spiritual breadcrumb stories, winks from the universe, whatever you want to call them. And it just, I can only think, Hale, because it is my dharmic path to do, this. I'm 2,000 podcasts in with my own show, Positive Head, and at this point, and because it is my dharmic path to talk a lot about some of these perspectives and concepts and philosophies, the ultimate nature of reality, as I like to call it. That it just lit me up as soon as I started being exposed. I'm like, oh my goodness, some of the early works, late 90s, when I was having this sort of awakening, if you will. Some of the early books I remember were Conversations with God, a series, Neil Donald Walsh. I just actually had him as a guest on my podcast recently, and that was a big, on the top of my list of people that I wanted to have the chance to chat with. And those were really influential books as an example. And for me, as I started, getting exposed to some of these concepts, it was like, oh my gosh, of course it's structured like this. Of course it's all one. I refer to it as a remembering, re-membering, coming back together with the truth of who and what we are. And so I would just talk to whoever would listen, about the things I was learning and remembering. And people would either be like, this guy's crazy, or, oh, that's really interesting, and go about their normal life. And I'm just like, how is everyone not lit up and excited about this, And here we are many decades later, and it's sort of, become in vogue more, I would say. In a lot of ways, a lot of these spiritual perspectives. And so, yeah, that's, and along the way, I had a travel company that an Inc. fastest growing private company. I went from my friend's couch to that in a few years, and a story of betrayal, all things I sort of document in my book, The Golden Key, which at the end I'll gift to everyone if they're interested in receiving that. And so, yeah, it's just been a story of serial entrepreneurship, teaching best what I most need to learn, as I often say on my own podcast.
Yes.
It's one thing to learn a lot of these concepts, as I did early on, and then it's another thing to put them into practice. And it's like Mike Tyson said it best. I think everyone's got to play until you get punched in the face. And for me, it's like I understood a lot of these things conceptually, and then it's been a 25-year journey of really integrating and implementing, managing my own nervous system and fieriness and all those things to understand that life is happening for me, not to me, and how to navigate with that as my core operating system, if you will. So yeah, done a podcast since 2015, Positive Head, and that's sort of trying to keep it under 10 minutes. That's my Cliff Notes version of my life.
Well, we'll pick it up in just a second. We have just a brief message, and then we'll really get into it. I'd love to hear some of your favorite shows and insights that you've gained along the way. I think there's a lot we can explore together. So this is going to be fun.
Looking forward to it.
So we're back. So you've said a lot of things to start us out, and it's all fascinating. It actually reminded me first of the first spiritual book I ever read back in 1973, I think it was, or 72.
You had to be a year before I was born, didn't you?
There were actually two. One was There's a River by Edgar Cayce, and the other one was Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. And that kind of got me searching. I think I was 17 or 18. I don't remember. I was pretty young. But it sounds like we both had similar paths, starting young, approaching this whole dimension.
Yeah, for me it was like 21, 22-ish. I actually grew up in the Virginia Beach area, where the Edgar Cayce, I forget exactly how they refer to it, sort of all the archives of all his work is there. And at one point, I think one of his predictions was that's the best place to live with the coming changes on the planet.
Yes.
So he moved there, and me being questionable in my intelligence sometimes, I grew up there and moved away. So in Southern California now. So
right. Well, I've spent 30 years in Sedona, Arizona, and partially I was attracted there because my mentor, Lester Levinson, who I met in 1976,
Mm-hmm.
uh, 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 knew about the coming Earth changes as well, and he thought Sedona was going to be a safe spot. So, of
Mm.
course, I only a few years ago I left too. I now
You're
live
like,
in
well,
the
everything's
Pacific
remained pretty safe.
Northwest.
He wasn't wrong. It was safe, right?
For that time, yes, it
Yeah,
was.
yeah, yeah.
So tell me, what is it you mentioned earlier that part of where the rubber meets the road is trying to share this?
Mm.
So tell me some of the key things that you share from all your exploration.
That's a great question. So yeah, for me, some of the key things, and I outline these in my book, The Golden Key, Modern Alchemy to Unlock Infinite Abundance, and it's basically my 25-year journey, deep exploration of the ultimate nature of reality, as I like to refer to it. And I'm, if you haven't already picked up on it, I'm pretty verbose. I have a lot to say and a lot of thoughts and ideas, and talk fast and think fast. And so I love speaking to someone like you. So it helps me to let me try and be a little calmer. But for me was really, okay, I have 25 years on this journey. How do I condense, 2,000 episodes of my podcast, which is a pretty high number, as I'm sure you know. We've done
Oh yeah,
for,
absolutely.
for 5 days a week for 8 years or whatever. And so I tried to really condense it down to 8 keys, in that golden key, modern alchemy to unlock infinite abundance. There's 7 keys, and then the 8th key, kind of the master key, the golden key, is as I distilled it down into 3 hours to listen to the book or 100 pages to read. And so yeah, I mean, I'm happy to sort of rattle off what those keys are if you think that would be
Well,
helpful.
it's really up to you.
Yeah.
Why don't you, if you want to, on our podcast, I try to give as much material as possible,
Mm-hmm.
and it sounds like we can go through part of the book now, and
Yeah.
then if people want the whole book, they can just ask for it at the end.
Sure. So I'll rattle off the keys, which really is a high level of sort of my takeaways of this journey. The first key is see the oneness. The second key is know the illusion. The third key is focus your flow. The fourth key is align your intentions. The fifth key is be. The sixth key is trust the mystery. The seventh key is love what comes. And the golden key, the 8th key, is master the YOU, master the universe. So those are my high level takeaways. And really, Hale, I think the most important thing, fundamentally, for people to shift their operating system, if they will, the core, place from which they navigate, is understanding that there is no out there. The universe, you are the lead actor director in your own private YOU universe. Everything is a prop in your movie. You're a pinpoint through which infinite consciousness is experiencing itself. And if you imagine, source, God, the higher self, the universe, whatever you want to call it, it's so infinite in its scope and scale, and its resources, infinite resources. There's enough for everyone to have their own private universe. And even within that, as you as an avatar, as a fractal of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things, there's many timelines for that avatar to play out. And so, that's really sort of the core of my everything I talk about, and like I said, teach best what I most need to learn is, when you start showing up in your world with that as your central premise as to the nature of the situation in which you find yourself. I'm the star of my own private movie. Everything's a prop reflecting me back to me. Everywhere I go, I'm there waiting for myself. Everything is happening for me, not to me. Now, how do I take whatever is reflecting and say, why is this happening for me? What is this teaching me about myself? What is this showing me about myself? How can I find the silver lining? Understanding that it's all sort of neutral based off of the story we tell around it, which then gives it the flavoring of how it actually is received. These are some of the core principles and ideas that I'm just fascinated by and love to share and help to, because a lot of us probably listening to the show, a lot of people listening to the show have heard this sort of a lot of these concepts. And however, when it's delivered through the unique avatar that is Brandon Beachum, it has its own, way of maybe sticking or penetrating, or the seed is planted in a slightly different way, because we're all unique. We're all the same and unique emanations of that sameness. And so, it's great to just, circle it and experience it and feel it through different conduits. And yeah, I mean, that's my greatest passion is doing that. And a lot of it is, the good kind of selfish, because as soon as I'm tapping into some of this, I love these conversations, because now I'm swimming in the vibrational pool of these truths, and they're very clear, beautiful, fresh. They're waters that enliven you, if you will. And
Yeah.
so, that's why I can talk about this stuff all day, every day, and not get tired of it.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So, a couple of things to unpack there. First off, this assumption that you're the center of your universe.
Hmm.
Is it possible that you're you're the center of your own individual illusion?
Yeah. I think that's a great question. And it's like, it is a divine dichotomy, two apparently contradictory things that both hold true. You and I are separate. That's true. We can make a case for that. You and I are one. That's true. We can make a case for that based off of the premise from which we are speaking, relative truths.
Yes.
So, am I the lead actor, director, star of my own private movie, and I am everything? And but also, don't fall into a spiritual narcissistic trap with that, because so are you, and I'm just a prop in your movie, reflecting a part of you back to you in an image that you created, I believe, with these certain characteristics, etc. And so we're all doing that. We're all the stars of our own private universe, and props in each other's movie, and it means everything. And we are it, and we are the one, right? And I think that's why a lot of people on their spiritual journey fall into that spiritual narcissistic trap as they wake up. Oh my gosh, I'm the one. Yes, you are, but don't get it too big headed, because so is everyone else the one. And so from that perspective, it's like I am of the most utmost profound importance. And simultaneously, this is all a dream God once had. It's yes, you can argue all day long. It's just an illusion. It means everything and nothing simultaneously, I would say.
Yes, yes. But I'm drilling down specifically on something that I'm sure you've recognized or talked to people who've recognized and felt yourself, that there's something beyond this this projection
Hmm.
that we appear to live in. In
Hmm.
other words, as long as there's a sense of me, there's a sense of I'm the center of the universe,
Hmm.
and there's me here, and the whole universe is there.
Hmm.
And there's a very popular uh, perception that I'm the influencer, or basically I'm my own God within my own universe.
Hmm.
And that's a very valid perspective. Yet, have you sensed that there's something even beyond that?
Yeah, I would say when you start thinking about these concepts, and it gets pretty, it can hurt your brain for sure, your human perspective. Yeah, this is sort of, I think there's, like I said, relative truths. And so there is you said, I'm the, you know, I'm the God of my own universe. Or you mentioned something earlier. There's me, and then there's the universe, right? Almost like it creates a separation. And I'm saying, you know, dissolving that. I am, the famous Bible verse, I am that I am, right? Well, actually, let's break that down. I am that. I am that. I am that. I am the tree. I am that. You know what? Just forget that. I am,
Yeah.
right? I am that. I am. It just I think that's what you're talking about here. It's like once you start creating me and them, you can do that and play with that. And then behind that, a deeper truth, it's like it all sort of dissolves. It's I am. And that's where you get into the beingness of, it's like when you're judging a leaf, I heard Alan Watts speak about this. If you're judging a leaf, it's green, it's the arrow-headed shaped thing. Like, you're instantly sort of minimizing it even. And it's not even necessarily true. Is it really green, or is that just the part that doesn't absorb and is reflecting, and is
Right,
it
right, right,
really
right.
the shape you're seeing in your mind? And so what I'm hearing is you're talking about that journey from I am that to I am. And they're sort of different vantage points of the same truth, I would say.
Yes, but I agree with you. There are different vantage points of the same perspective, absolutely. But is there actually something? And again, if this is just something for us to explore together.
Yeah, I love it.
Is there actually something beyond this sense of I am?
I remember reading a long time ago something by Osho, who's
Yes.
controversial in his own right, and I'm one who I'm very slow to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yes.
I don't know if anyone's seen the Netflix documentary Wild Wild Country. It's pretty wild.
Yes.
And that's his
I actually
commune.
I didn't watch it, but I know all about it.
Yeah, and some of the most profound insights I've ever come across come from Osho.
Uh-huh.
And it doesn't mean there wasn't dysfunction there and ego and who knows, it's like he was here on his own journey and growing. If he's here, I know he's got growth to do, because I don't think he'd be here if he didn't. And so that being said, that little disclaimer, one of the perspectives I remember reading many years ago that he talked about is that God, the supreme being that creates all things, the one, right, comes from the nothing. So beyond the one, and part of our own journey as beings will be back to the void, which we can never understand or even conceptualize. So it's like, 1 and 0. Is it 1 or is it 0? Yes.
Yes, exactly.
And so, what you're speaking to is, I think, from where does God come from? Nothingness. So God is everything and nothing simultaneously. And so from the void came everything. And can we even conceptualize that beyond saying it? I don't believe so. So
Yeah, it's definitely not something to conceptualize.
yeah, right, exactly. So I think that the deepest truth, if you will, is nothingness.
Yes.
Comes from nothingness.
But
Something comes from nothing.
Yes, but
If we can imagine.
does nothing have a boundary?
I'm a fan of the sacred geometric shape, the Vesica Pisces. Are
Uh-huh.
you familiar with this?
I don't remember what that is.
Okay, I'll explain it. So you've probably seen it. I actually did a late night style TV show pre-COVID, 9 months leading up to COVID. We shot 17 episodes of a show called Optimistic, spelled like MYSTIC. I love plays on words. Optimistic. And if you go to optimistic.tv, you'll see the first 4 episodes. We've actually released some still because of COVID are still sitting in a hard drive ready to be released. But anyway, if you see the logo for the show Optimistic, you'll see it's the Vesica Pisces, and we kind of did our own iteration of it for the logo. And so if you think of consciousness, God, source, you could even make the void a part of this conceptualization. Infinite, unbounded, no boundaries, right?
Yes.
But now if consciousness makes a circle, it creates a boundary, right? So the Vesica Pisces, you'll see one circle. But, so now you've got boundlessness with, it's kind of like the fishbowl within the ocean, right? It's like
Right,
you've
right.
got a circle. But if I create a second circle and overlap them, now you have 2 boundaries with an overlap, which creates in our image, we put an eye in there. That is sort of like, it looks like the vagina. It's we are birthed through the two boundaries over crossing and creating a third, which creates the opportunity for there to be relativity and truth and experience and all these things. So I love that image for that reason. It's like, or you could be mother, father, son. It's like very, the Holy Trinity, in a sense,
Yes,
is
yes.
consciousness being, creating two boundaries and overlapping those, which everything is birthed through that canal, in a sense. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what comes to mind when you ask me about is it boundless?
Well, no, first off, that was fascinating.
Yeah.
Yes, now that you mentioned the overlapping circles, yes, I'm certainly familiar with that.
You've seen that.
I didn't know what it was called.
Yep. Now you do.
Now I do. Or maybe I heard it and forgot.
Yeah, right. That's one of those things. I don't know if I would have remembered it if I hadn't borrowed that as a logo for my show.
Yeah, well, it's a great logo.
It really is. It really
is. So I'm kind of taking this down in a different direction. So let's bring it back to, because again, I think everything you're talking about is fascinating. It really is.
Yeah, I agree.
But you outlined a bunch of conceptual frameworks, 8 of them. And what have you discovered as the practical application? Again, within that, where the overlap is.
Yep.
There's something going on there.
Yeah.
So how would you describe that, or what have you discovered about that you think would be helpful for everyone listening?
Yeah, right. One of the most powerful things that, if I boil it all down, and what is okay, now what is, give me the high level cliff notes of all these concepts, and it's really, there's some sort of key things that really come up for me, and it's like, a lot of times people fall into comparison. I mean, we live in an age of social media and how many followers and likes and all the stuff, and comparison is the thief of joy. and so what I really, it boils down to for me is when you can really ground in to the core of your being that you are as worthy as any other being ever has been, could be, or will be, by virtue of the fact that you are it is you. There has never been one that is more worthy, more divine. There's no moment more divine than this moment. It's you're perfectly imperfect, right? It is, everything is leading you to the next greatest and grandest version of yourself, and everything is, instead of paranoia, this concept of pronoia you may have heard of, the idea that everything is conspiring in my favor all the time, and always and always. And so once you start, you can kind of navigate from this understanding. You boil down, okay, why is this happening for me? Oh, it's easy when we love what's happening, like to be excited, but really, instead of, now what this helps you to do is, instead of being a puppet on a string, right? If this happens, I'm happy. If this happens, I'm sad. If this happens, instead you start working on showing up in the state that you choose to be. You're becoming proactive instead of reactive.
Mm-hmm.
And these are really big turning points. Because you understand, like, oh, okay, I may not like it, but I can be it. We're not here to, I don't believe we're here to be happy all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We're here to be at peace with what is, and to find the learning in it and the growth in it. It's, this idea of smooth seas never made for a skilled sailor, and we all came to be skilled sailors. Or Rumi said it in a different way, how will my mirror be polished if I am annoyed by every rub? And so you start taking this lens of the universe on, it really allows you to navigate with more grace, ease, and to get the diamond that is formed under the pressure. Coal is just, or a diamond is just coal that held up extremely well under pressure. That's you. That's us. And so to become the diamond, I believe these perspectives and these tools are paramount to allow us to sort of, you get one thing I do is I that really inspires me to get it right is if I believe the universe will give you the lesson until you get the lesson. So if you don't like something, the
Over
good
and
news
over
is,
again.
you better get it right. And so, if you don't love something, remember, the only thing guaranteed is change. If you do love something, you better appreciate it and be fully present for it because it's going to change. And so, understanding this, it really helps you to putting all this together into a stew and cooking it up really helps you to I believe I found, and of course actions, results speak the loudest. Whenever we're talking about these kind of ideas and concepts and philosophies, it's like, if someone has had 4 bad marriages and is miserable and they start giving me marriage advice, I might not want to listen, and so, what kind of results is it getting you? And what I found is putting all this together really has served me well and others well. And so, yeah, I don't quite remember where we started with the question, but that's my answer.
That was great. I actually often experience the same thing. I don't, when I lead seminars or when I speak to people who've come for assistance, there's never a pre-plan there's just the response that happens spontaneously. And so often at the end, I went, wow, that was interesting. Where that came from?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Don't even know.
Exactly.
So I appreciate that sentiment.
Yeah. It's, when you really, I think there's a lot of people in our community, if you will, and the space that, channeling is a big thing. And I personally, it's never been of interest to me to take on
Yes.
another persona or something like that. But I do believe, and as Mozart, I believe it was, or Beethoven, or one of them, says, "Look, this is all just coming through me. Like it's
Yes.
not mine." And I
Yes.
think that's really, when we get into these states and talking about these things, just opening it up, and I believe it's all sort of especially art and things that are profound can be, we tap into our own sort of channeling, whether higher self, whether guides, whether combination, who knows such things, but it feels like some assistance at times.
Yes. No, I definitely feel that way. I can't take credit for, there are people all over the world doing the Sedona method work. And I really never feel like I can take credit for any of it. When people
Right.
say, "Oh, you did that," doesn't feel that way.
Right. That's a great example. Great example.
It just doesn't feel that way.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, what has been some of your favorite interviews,
Ooh,
and why?
good question. I referenced Neil Donald Walsh because he was recent, and
Yes.
it's just someone I've wanted to have on for a long time. He was great. Early on in my journey, and I've had him on a couple times now, Dr. Evan Alexander,
Hmm.
the Harvard neurosurgeon who, what do you know? The Harvard brain specialist gets a rare form of meningitis in his brain. One day is fine, and the next day he's in a coma, and his, brain is getting eaten alive by, this bacteria. After a week in a coma, they say, sorry, family, his brain is fried. The neocortex, the part that would have any hallucinations or whatever, doesn't, it's been pretty much eaten alive, and you need to pull the plug. That's the only thing left to do. He's not coming back. And he miraculously came back.
Right.
And he wrote a book about it called Proof of Heaven, I believe. And, he got a lot of attention because he's a Harvard brain specialist. He wasn't
Right.
into anything spiritual woo-woo, if you will. So he got a lot of attention for it. And I really appreciated my conversations with him because I feel like he truly got a, when he miraculously came back after they pulled the plug, all he remembered at first was his time on the other side. He didn't even remember, who's Eben Alexander, and it kind of came back to him slowly. But, he talked about how things are structured and what he was shown on the other side. And this idea that, you know, uh, we reincarnate in soul families or soul groups. And that really resonates and feels true to me. Think of if source is an infinite tree expanding infinitely in all directions, uh, yet there will be a branch and there will be two leaves flapping in eternity on that same branch, right? And so I believe that's sort of our soul families or soul groups. And, he put it was really helpful to me because I had him on in 2015, right when I launched the podcast, and that late 2015, I had, one of the things he talked about is oftentimes your biggest allies and best friends on the other side will play the villain for you in your story, in a particular incarnation. And around the time I interviewed him, I had a big betrayal. I had quite a hero's journey tale with a company, and it went from me on my friend's couch to an Inc. fastest growing private company in the US to, getting offered to be bought out for, $30 million and then losing 90% of our revenue within 12 hours of that, which caused, of course, that deal to blow up. And then my best friend and business partner that I'd given all this equity to in the company tried to betray me and take what was left. And, so it really stuck with me, like that idea. And many years later, that same best friend, we didn't talk for 6 years. The day I hit published, I was done. I submitted everything. My book, The Golden Key, where I talk about my hero's journey tale with that partner. He called me same day. Oh, what? My girlfriend's like, answer. And so I answer, and he's like, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but since we talked 6 years ago, I've been on I've had my own spiritual awakening, and now I don't think you're, a spiritual kook. I'm actually, fully in line with everything that you believed and were talking about and trying to get through to me back then. And, and had his own sort of journey and awakening, and we rekindled our friendship. And so it truly, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, to the day I submitted the book, here he is. And he said, and part of the reason I'm calling you is I have an intuitive friend who's told me something about us writing a book together. And I'm like, oh, you should go pick it up. You're the villain in my hero's journey tale. And so, yeah, it's really, a beautiful thing to see, kind of other layers of how this is all unfolding. So Eben Alexander, definitely up there. There's a few others I could name as well. However, I just spoke for a long time, so you may want another question.
No. This is fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely this sense of synchronicity in life. There's just waves of certain types of patterns that all seem to go together.
Yep.
And inexplicably, we make up a story after the fact, and we think we know why it happened, but we don't really. We just know that there are certain patterns that can be really fun to notice. Really fun to notice.
So I had a friend who used to always jokingly call me Mr. Synchronicity every time. And Robert Grant, who I had on the show, talked about, I'm paraphrasing, but synchronicity is God's encryption that hasn't, that we're decoding in a sense, like something to that effect. And so I think with synchronicity, the more excited you get about things, and seeing it. And for me, I also refer to them as spiritual breadcrumbs, leading me to something as well. I get a lot of that. And I think because, I have sort of that sense of childlike wonder about it. The one Bible verse I like to quote is, "Lest you become like a child, you can't enter the kingdom of heaven." I think that's true. I like, I think of myself as a poster adult for childhood. And I think doing that and bringing that excitement around every time something synchronistic or a breadcrumb is dropped in my path, I'm like, oh my gosh, guys, guess, and I'm sharing it and on my show and so I think that really just leads to more of that energy. And so yeah, it's really fascinating how that can unfold. And I definitely get my fair share of it. I think a lot of people have different types of spiritual experiences too, and for me, I think that's the one that the most those grounded synchronicities and spiritual breadcrumbs. Some of the stories I have are pretty, like my birthday, for example. They're pretty mind blowing ones. Like, wow, these are deep. Like, you know, whole crazy level to them. So.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So you mentioned Neil Donald Walsh.
Mhm.
What did you take away from your interview with him?
Great question. And I'll throw out another person as well that
Good.
sticks out. Neil, I'd asked him, what is w- you had this dialogue. For those who don't know, he wrote the Conversations with God book series, which were, big bestsellers. And, came from him breaking up with his wife, losing his job, breaking his back, all within weeks. And he is frustrated and like, God, just show me what I should do, and he started getting answers supposedly. And that's what turned into the Conversations with God book series. And once again, you're right. Now we're talking about a channeling sort of phenomenon, but at the end of the day, it's like I'm less interested in that. And what is the content? And it's definitely seems very inspired, in spirit, inspirational. And
Yes.
so, so to me, I tend to believe when I see like some channeled text or whatever that are like, wow, profound. And so I asked him when I had him on, well, Neil, in all your dialogue with God, what was your you know some of your biggest takeaways or wow moments, and one of the things that he said was that God supposedly said to him, in the absence of that which you are not, that which you are is not. And my speech therapist partner says, well, that was a bunch of double negatives. And she starts analyzing the statement. God,
Yeah.
get your grammar down. In the absence of that which you are not, so if you're not evil, right, your love, let's say, in the absence of evil, that which you are, love, is not. In the absence of that which you are not, that which you are is not. So you need evil is live spelled backwards, right? And so you need the sweet's never quite as sweet without the sour. And so once you start to, and I agree, that's a profound truth and realization. So many people get caught up on love and light, love and light, love and light. But the higher the branches, the deeper the roots. The brighter the light, the bigger the shadow it casts, right? So you have to understand that I look at it. My child's mother, for example, is a great example for me. The greatest gift in my life is my son, and he is such a light. And and I am so excited to see as he comes into young adulthood, what magic and ripples of positivity he will ripple out. And yet, and I see myself as someone who's helped a lot of people to awaken and remember their divine nature and all these sorts of things, and yet, the way I see with her, we're like yin and yang. She is very scarily dark. eh, you know, um, eh, I didn't really believe in the idea of possession until I saw her kind of go from a little crazy to, it's like she talks in old English and, like it's saying very dark, scary things. So it's like, oh, and then Marsan is very integrated. He's integrated with his, shadow self and, like, it's like, and I view him as, oh, he chose parents that, are yin yang, light, dark. And I'm going to be the integration of the two and help to sort of balance out her family line and DNA is how I view it. So it's like, and from the ultimate perspective, you take Evan Alexander's, some of his concepts, it's like, oh, she loved me and him so much. She says, oh, I'll absorb the darkness. right? You can be bright lights. I'll absorb that. It's like for you and I to sit here and have this conversation without Saturn and Jupiter absorbing all the asteroids and meteors and whatever coming into our solar system, we wouldn't be here. The planet would be just constantly under attack, and life couldn't thrive. So, in a sense, I see it as it's a beautiful thing. She's absorbing the impact, as a connected soul of our soul family.
Yes.
So yeah, um, that's a big perspective. So yeah, when you take that concept that Neil was talking about, it's a necessary evil, let's say.
Yes. Yes. But, there's also a very simple way to view that, is that both light and dark are the same. They're just one energy.
Yeah. Right.
Sometimes it appears dark and sometimes it appears light.
Yep.
But the appearance is not what's important there. The fact that it's just one energy.
The fact that it's divine.
Yes.
My favorite book, I asked Neil, he's written 20 some books. And I said, Neil, could you guess which book is my favorite out of all yours? Not that I've read them all, but I've read a few. And he instantly rattled off a couple of his books. And I was like, nope, your children's book, The Little Soul in the Sun. And I believe it's the most powerful, profound book. Everyone from 9 to 99 should read it. You can read it in 10 minutes. And it basically, to sum it up, it's, the sun is, metaphor for God. And, all these little lights make up the sun, and they're in perfection. And everywhere you look, it's just perfect lights. And yet without one of them, the sun wouldn't be what it is. And then at one point in no time, as the book refers to it, one of the lights, it was creative, and it thought a little different, had this concept that never had occurred to it before. The idea of experiencing something other than that, the idea of forgiveness. Well, he starts this dialogue with the sun, the little light does, and all the other little lights are so intrigued, like, wow, what is an interesting conversation. What is forgiveness? Well, there's nothing to forgive. The little soul's sad, like, and the sun's like, you always were the adventuresome one, the creative one. I knew you'd come up with this, so I've thought of something. However, it will take one of your fellow lights. I'll send you both somewhere, and they'll have to dim their light and forget their divine nature in order to give you something to forgive. And another light steps forward and says, I love you so much. I'll volunteer. I'll dim my light. I'll slow my vibration and forget myself so that I can do this awful thing to you. And then the light's a little scared, like, awful. And it's like, oh, don't worry. It'll just be pretend, the sun says. And the little light steps forward and says, I'll do this thing because I love you so much. But in that moment, in order to slow my vibration and dim my light so much so that I could do this awful thing and it actually be, authentic, I'll have lost myself. I'll have forgotten myself. So all I ask in the moment I do this awful thing to you is you remember me as I am here and now. Because if you forget too, then we may both be lost for a very long, long time. And to me, it's such a beautiful book and story and perspective of what the heck is going on here. And once you get that, it's like you can't see it quite the same. It doesn't mean now you keep signing yourself up for abuse or anything.
Right.
Like that. It's like,
I didn't think you were promoting abuse.
Yeah. But it's a beautiful and profound perspective. So, it's something to forgive. What a concept.
Yes. Beautiful. And that's I think that's a great place for us to start to wrap this up. So you mentioned in the beginning that you have a book to give away. Do you want to say more about that?
Sure. Yeah. It's called The Golden Key, Modern Alchemy to Unlock Infinite Abundance. And so had a dream about the concept of the book and then researched, and there was a golden key in written 100 years ago. And oh, look, it was published on my birthday, where, like I said, I have this wild synchronicity story with my birthday that I write about in the book, actually. So just followed those breadcrumbs. And, and even that book back then, it was sort of a gamified sort of concept, which was similar in a way, as you'll see in my book, that you can play with the universe, if you will. And so, yeah, if you go to goldenkey.gift, G-I-F-T, goldenkey.gift, and you use the code LOVE at checkout, you can download the audio and or ebook for free.
That's a very generous offer. Thank you. Thank you. So repeat that one more time.
Yeah, goldenkey.gift is the URL and a website. And then you just go to checkout. You can add, like I said, audio and or ebook. A lot of people, they say you retain things better if you read and listen simultaneously. You can get both or one or the other for free when you use the key code LOVE at checkout, LOVE.
Great. Well, thank you. It's been a real pleasure.
Likewise.
Listening to your the wisdom you have to share and what you've experienced. It sounds like your podcast has been fun and fascinating and really supportive of people. So
I look forward to having you as a guest on mine as well. So
yeah, it should be fun. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Brandon Beachum. You can learn more about Brandon at goldenkey.gift. That's GOLDENKEY.gift. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe so you have immediate access to future episodes. Please give us a 5-star rating and share it with the people you care about. If you'd like to learn more about my work, my mentor Lester Levinson's work, and the Sedona Method, please visit www.sedona.com. As you explore our site, you'll learn the key to lasting happiness, success, peace, and emotional well-being. We have books, courses, events, and plenty of free material to explore. Again, go to sedona.com. That's SEDONA.com. Thank you for being here, and we'll catch you in the next episode of Letting Go and the Greatest Secret.